Welcome to episode 26 of Whole Lot of Wolves. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
And I'm Paul LePage.
And we're bringing back a Whole Lot of Wolves original, Mr. Chris Wood from Ohio Wolves. How's it going, Chris?
It's going pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Well, not too bad. Chris joined us on our very first guest episode, which if you want to go back in the archives and listen to his story, it's show number 2. We're good to have you back, Chris. A lot of fun.
Thanks for having me again.
And if you guys are active on the Wolves USA Facebook page, Chris is actually the one that started that page. So thank you for that.
I'm one of the co-founders, but I'm the most active still. But yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Things are about to pick up again. It's been a little slow here with the international break. What have you guys been doing the last week or so?
I've been building a new PC, which I'm still waiting on to get a new graphics card, but I use one off of my old rig. People online can't see it, but you guys can. The thing's massive.
Not much here. Desperately counting down the days till the Wolves start playing again. The international games have been okay, but don't grab the attention like the Wolves do.
Well, let's go ahead and start with the internationals here. So there's been some pretty interesting performances. I want to start with Pedro Neto because he's looking like he is a starter for Portugal. Him and Ronaldo and Jota up top. How exciting is this to see?
I think it adds another 0 to his valuation, which could factor into the mix come the summer as well.
Yeah, and so it's going to put a bigger price tag on his head. We're going to have a bunch of people courting him, but it also, if we do sell him, it's going to make us have a bigger transfer kitty in the long run, but I don't want to see him go just yet.
Yeah. And also Vitana was starting for the U21s and was doing a really solid job. Paul, you stumbled upon a Twitter feed about him.
Yeah, it dug into... I didn't catch the game. I saw some clips of some of his passes and his link-up play from that game, and that thread went into pretty good detail. I'll try and dig it out and reshare it when it came to some of the balls that he was putting through and the positions that he was taking up. And again, it was distinctly more of a centre midfielder role, no number 10 that he's sometimes often classed as. I think pretty much that he could well be heir apparent to Moutinho in that type of role, that he's distinctly a central midfielder, and that's where we'll get the best of him from. So I think there was some positive signs with there, but you see sometimes it's a little... These players, they're always a million times better when they're not in the team, and then they go into an under-23 game, which again, it's an under-23. It's not Class A standard. Obviously it's good quality and everything, but it's not like a blood and thunder EPL game. So you take that with a grain of salt as well. But I think the kid's got his quality, and that really shined through in the game against England's under-21s as well, where again, certain parts of that game he was standing out. And there we are talking about a calibre of opponent that's pretty decent, with the bulk of those players on the England team that are regular, or they're certainly in the match day squad when it comes to their teams in the EPL. So he's done himself no harm whatsoever in hopefully getting some more game time as the season closes out.
I didn't get to see most of the internationals this week, but going back to Vitinha, a lot of people have been saying, I'm like, why haven't we've been playing him all season? I'm like, I think he was mainly brought in to shadow Moutinho for most of the season, just like Silva was for Jimenez. Silva was thrown into the deep end too quick. But last couple of games, I saw him play like a couple of spots where if he can do that on a regular basis, he'll be brilliant. But more Vitinha, I'm like, Moutinho's still here. He's going to learn from him. Hopefully, if we don't have anything to play for closer to the end of the season, I think Nuno's going to just put him in to go out and do something. But that's just me, though.
I think to that point as well, Chris, that when it started to look shaky, those results, the bad run and everything, one thing that Nuno did was really rely on his generals.
Yeah.
I think there was no way that Moutinho or Neves was being shifted in that crucial period.
Yeah.
So hopefully, going forwards, we get that buffer between mid-table and the relegation zone, where we will be comfortably safe and there is some more game time. Be good to see what he can do.
There were a few more standouts during the international. I know Willie Bolly scored for Ivory Coast. We had Connor Cody playing in a back four. I assume you watched those games, Paul?
Yeah, he got the captain's armband in the second half of that game as well. And yeah, he did pretty well. What just stands out when it comes to that team, and you may have picked up on Declan Rice's comments from West Ham afterwards. Just like the leadership that he brings and
Yeah, I saw that.
what he's able to offer to the squad, even if he's not playing, he's a fulcrum to it. He brings leadership there. But yeah, on the pitch, again, often all you can hear is him shouting, giving instructions, encouraging, everything that goes with it. I'm really pleased to see him in a four. Again, it's more experience for him in that role. I'm not writing him off in the future in the back four. I don't think he'll be an out and out starter if we really do go down that route. But I wouldn't be surprised to see his game develop another couple of notches, that he could become a regular in the back four. And I definitely think he's got his seat on the plane for the Euros in the England squad, definitely now.
And then we got Theo Corbino. And am I saying that right, Paul?
I'd
Corbiano, I think.
I'd go Corbiano.
Corbiano.
Yeah, that.
We got a bunch of Canadian listeners that they need to get in touch and tell us the proper pronunciation, and you can either do it on a recording and we'll plug it in so you can listen how it should be done. But yeah, something like that.
So this little 18-year-old from Canada, he scored in one of the two games that Canada had this week. Looking pretty good. There were a lot of people saying he was very impressive playing the forward role. Do we see any type of future for him at Wolves, or is he somebody they should probably send off on loan?
I would probably send him off on loan first. I actually got to see a clip of the actual goal. It reminds me of Daniel Podence's couple of his goals where the guy, one of the wingers, kicks the ball into the 6-yard box and he just gets right on the end of it, kicks it in. It was a poacher's goal, but it was a beautiful goal nonetheless.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a height difference between him and Podence.
Yeah. I saw the guy. He was actually delivering something to his house. The guy's 6'8", Podence is 5'4", and like his head and shoulders above him.
I think you're right, though. I think it makes obvious sense that he goes out on loan and has a season and can see what he's capable of. He's had some glimpses off the bench, but obviously no debut for the first team yet. I did see on one of the forums that given he's got Turkish roots, there might be of some interest from the likes of Galatasaray or Besiktas. So that would be a heck of a move if he goes to Turkey and we're still able to retain him as a Wolves player. So who knows?
Going back to news that was coming down during the break, one guy who we anticipate will not be going anywhere this summer is Roman Saiss. He had a clause in his contract that triggered by the amount of starts he had, and so he's got another year added to his contract. How you feel about that, guys?
I think he's a great squad player if he doesn't start a lot next season, but he's one of those characters you need in the dressing room. I'm like, you can put him in the midfield, you can put him in the back, he'll do a job for you.
I think it's interesting that it was a contract extension that kind of came out the blue. I think it's still interesting that it was triggered. And even with that extra year, I wouldn't be surprised to see him leave still.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's happened based on those appearances that it was a guarantee for him. And I think that it gives the club some protection that he's 31 now. If a reasonable offer does come in and he wants a fresh scenery or he wants to get one final payday now that he's in his early 30s, then I think it could be one that happens. And we've certainly been a club that hasn't been afraid to make those types of moves, be it Barry Douglas, that was a big surprise when we got promoted. He seemed like a dead cert to start at left wing back. He was sold.
I still miss Baza.
I still miss his deliveries from corners. And similarly, Benikophobia as well. Everyone thought that would be a done deal. Great player to have on the squad, challenging for a starting role. He signed, but was then sold the next day. So We'll see on that one. I don't think it may not necessarily be that extension that we're thinking of long term.
The news came out about Vitana. It sounds like Wolves have an agreement with Porto where it's going to be 16 million euros. Saw a little mixed reaction to that as we were talking about what exactly role should he be playing for the team. How about your thoughts?
I think if he does play, he should be like doing exactly what Moutinho's doing, or he should be understudy to Neves, also playing the defensive midfielder role. But I think Neves actually should be playing Moutinho's role and having a quote unquote enforcer with him, something like Dendoncker or Roman Saiss playing next to him, because I think he plays better when he's actually being the maestro, trying to pick every pass out. But I think he'll come in. He'll be pretty much be slotted into Moutinho's role.
For me, in general, out of all the signings last summer, given the economic situation, the pandemic, work permits, everything going on with the EU and Brexit and all of the fallout from that, I don't think any of the players that came in last summer, either on loan with an obligation or with an option, I don't think any of those last summer were a wasted signing, in that Vitinha will be made permanent, Outnura will be made permanent. Obviously, Silva was the long-term investment. I think looking back in hindsight, that was done specifically based on his age, potential, maybe not being able to sign him for a couple of years, based on all of that and the points that he would need to move countries to England and play now that they've got work permits back. I think that was done specifically to get him before all of that kicked off. And again, Hoover, that calibre of player that are younger, getting established. I think all of those players came in for a specific reason that summer. So I think it's a done deal. I think Vitana is going to be here for a specific purpose.
And I think also with a proper preseason under their belt that's not expedited quickly because of the short end of close season, I think we'll actually hit the ground running next year, even with the Euros being where they are this summer too. But I think everyone's going to come together this summer, and we're actually going to kick off pretty good next year.
So do you think the price was fair? 16 million euros?
I do, yeah. I think it's, again, you're paying for some potential somewhat, but the stuff that we picked up when he was coming over from the Porto fans and even our friend John Batista, they were glowing about him. So I think that's where it comes in, that you're paying for that potential. And I think anything around about that figure could be exceptional value in a couple of years' time.
So they were glowing, and they were also mad too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be a transfer window without talking about a George Mendes client. And the first one on the docket is Francisco Trincao. What are you guys thinking about that? Is apparently close to being a done deal. We'll see.
I know of him. I have never watched him play, so he's from Barcelona, right?
Yeah, he's
okay,
Barcelona guy.
Sign him up. It's all you need to say.
And he's Portuguese.
They don't call us Portuguese for nothing.
It's interesting that we're getting some links, him being one of them, with forward players that predominantly take up the wider positions as well. I think without anyone, even if it's the squad today, I still think we're a player short up top, and not necessarily a Jota direct like-for-like replacement, but someone who could come in to one of those three roles and offer something a little different, especially with Podence being out. I think that's been magnified prior to the international break, where Nuno's potentially looking around on the bench and there's no one to bring off to get someone on who can shake it up and offer something that little bit different. So I think there's space for a new arrival up top for sure.
And then Lucas Ocampos is another one, Argentinian, who's being rumored for Wolves. What do we know about him?
I know he's good at scoring against us, so based on that, I think it's one that we get in pretty quick.
Yeah, same here.
What do you think those two guys mean for Adama and Podence and Neto, because they're all wingers. Both those guys are wingers. And obviously we're hearing stuff about Neto. Adama's up in the air. Do you think one or both of those guys is going to be gone?
I think one of them probably gone. I'm going to say Adama since he didn't sign the new contract, but I wouldn't put it past both of them going and then us getting 5 or 6 top quality players in with that transfer kitty.
I think Adama's the more likely, as you say, based on the contract situation. I'd be inclined to think that we'd be able to keep Neto for another season, but yeah, to that point, never say never, be surprised at a shock departure, or it could be a shock departure or two. So if it does bring in that big bucks that allows us for the reinvestment, then great, but it does need to be significant in order to get some more bodies in, because that starts to make us really light then.
And then you already saw the Cristiano Ronaldo link again.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath.
Well, you never know.
Yeah. So here's the American in me talking, okay? And Paul, maybe you can fill me in on this. I always hear we're going to try and keep Neto, even though Man City wants him for 50-some million. To me, I look at it, he's got a contract. He's not, if I don't want him to go, he's not going anywhere. So why does it feel like in European soccer, the players have more power to dictate when he's got a signed contract? We're seeing this in the NFL here in Houston with Deshaun Watson. I want out. Well, tough. You got a contract. Deal with it.
Yeah, it's weird in that respect. European soccer's never offered that for a holdout of such, or the franchise tag, and I'm not going to play on the franchise tag and all of that stuff. So it is a dynamic, and certainly players always hold the power in European soccer predominantly. I think it may have some influence from the agent structure as well, in that oftentimes you hear it said that transfers aren't simple. There's a lot of moving parts. Both clubs have to agree. The agent has to agree. The player has to agree. And if one of those is missing, then it doesn't happen. It's a tricky one, how the players hold so much power. But at the end of the day, I think it often comes down to the money that's flooded the game, and players, they're looking to maximize their worth while they can, because it is a short career. And I think clubs recognize that if you do have some player that's discontented, it's better just cut your losses and get rid as soon as possible.
Like, I get Adama falling under that because his contract will be ending sooner. But to me, Neto just signed a new contract. You sign a new contract, hey, man, you're going to stick here. To me, I like what Dortmund does, okay? Sancho's a great example here. Manchester United wanted Sancho. Sancho wants to go to Manchester United. Dortmund said, you pay us 120 euros or you ain't going. And Manchester, yeah.
They always throw the transfer clause or the ending the contract clause. That way that if you want them, you have to pay this amount.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we did to get Adama from Middlesbrough. We actually paid the 18 mil up front instead of paying over a certain amount of years of his contract.
Gentleman's agreement comes into it on the contract side of it as well. So if it is an example of Neto, it's probably baked into that contract that he was happy to sign, that not only the Wolves benefiting from that commitment, but it's written in there, I'm totally being hypothetical here, that if these X number of clubs, and you'd even write them down, if one of these come in for you and it's over 50 million, then you've gone. You can go. You're free to do it.
I think I saw the rumor where his release clause is 75 million, but that's speculation though.
Yeah. So that factors into it as well, that a lot of that stuff is set up in advance. So when the moving parts of a transfer do start to trigger, that's what sets it all off.
Yeah, and if his release clause is 70 million, okay, you want him 70 million. There you go. That's the way I
pretty much, yeah.
And again, we've seen a lot over the international break about a lot of the club's finances that have been reported for the last operating year and profits are down, obviously crowds impacting on all of that, and how that may disrupt again the transfer market this season, in that it could create it's quite staggering to be saying this, but instead of 70 million pound signings, it's more 50 and 40, that the players' values have gone down, because unless something happens to trigger a bunch of other deals, nothing will happen. So that one big piece has got to move to set off a chain reaction across the transfer market, and it may mean that clubs have less money to spend, so they need to be going in for and bidding for players, and the values aren't going to be there what they were last summer, to a lesser extent definitely the summer before. So you could see a reduction in the money that's being spent.
I actually saw somewhere that they're gonna do away with the FFP as it is, and they're just gonna do something completely new where the clubs can actually are free to actually spend what they want, just don't go over a certain limit. But
Well,
I also saw Fosun's they might start spending some money this summer too, but who knows?
That FFP going away just shows you how much of a fraud it was to begin with.
It was a good idea, but it wasn't implemented properly. They need something similar to salary cap, what they have over here. Basically, you can only spend this amount of money or this amount of money on player salaries, and then you can only spend this amount of money on players to come in. But
it just meant the money laundering had to be done a little differently.
Yeah, or basically, if you're generating this amount of money, you can spend it, but if you're not, you can't spend it. So basically, it keeps the richer clubs richer, poor clubs a little, not poor, but you couldn't spend as much.
And then just an extension of that, there was some stuff again with all these financial reports coming out that Wolves were in the bottom third when it comes to salaries that have been paid, and that was over the previous 2 seasons. And then if you correlate that with the league finishing position of 7th in both seasons, that's a phenomenal achievement, really.
Points per pound spent.
So to be in that position that he achieved with that spend is phenomenal. And I think the only other one who's certainly punching above their weight there is Burnley. So it makes you take a look at what they do in year out and retaining their Premier League spot. That's taken some doing.
So we're going to play a little game that I just made up. Scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the most likely. I'm going to throw out some players there on the squad. You tell me on the 1 to 5 scale what the chances are of them leaving this summer. Okay?
All right.
So I'll start with Roman Saiss, since Paul thought that was pretty good. So what do you think?
4.
4?
I'm going 4, yeah.
I'll go 3.
Yeah, I'm going to be with Chris on that one.
Neutral. I'll say neutral.
Adama.
4.5.
I'm going 4.
I hate it, but I think it's a 4 as well. I think it's 4. Neto.
2.
Yeah, I'm going to be positive and say 2 on that one.
I'm going to say a 1. You just signed a contract. Deal with it.
I know, but if money comes in, they trigger this release clause. That's the only viable option, I think, or unless someone comes up with close to that, but they're going to do it over a couple seasons. Yeah. That's about it.
Dendoncker.
1.
Yeah, 2. I think part of the squad and pretty settled. I think his versatility would be one that they'd want to hold on to.
Semedo.
1.
He's barely got started.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. They may have a little buyer's remorse on that right now. Neves.
1, 2.
Goes under the radar with Neves that you never know. He's a star and he's had a good season, and he certainly plays a distinct role that there's not many similar midfielders to him. So it doesn't immediately stand out that it could be a threat, but I'll give it a 2.
I'm going to say 3. I think he may be the surprise one that leaves. Jimenez.
1. Yeah.
Good. I agree as well. Bali.
2.
Yeah, 2. I can't see it. If we get that marquee centre-back signing in, I think it would be him and Bolly in a 4. But I think he will have to be on his game to retain the jersey long term. And again, he's probably touching 29, 30, is he already? Close to that. So if the club do want to see some resale value from him, you never know. You really don't.
Gibbs White.
-5.
I think he'll go back out on loan, so I'm going to say 4.5, 5.
I just hope they go ahead and sell him. Just be done with it.
I'm hoping. I'd like, in an ideal world, that Swansea, one of the team that gets promoted from the Championship, and that's a natural place for him to go to. And seems he did so well there. There may be more of a premium to pay for him than there will be elsewhere. So that would be my ideal path for him.
Molineux.
5. He's going back to Porto.
I think that's looking likely. It makes sense, and I think everyone would wish him a fond farewell, certainly. But I think we would get a tiny bit of value from him. He'd still be under contract for a year. But yeah, for him at his age to go and have that swan song with Porto for a season or two, Champions League, he can play in and he'll still do well. So yeah, I think that's probably a 5 as well,
yep,
really.
I agree. And finally, Connor Cody.
1.
Yeah, I'm going for a 1. Under contract, key cog to the machine, regardless of whether he's playing, even if he's in the match day squad, regardless of formation. And I will champion Cody that, again, I could see him transition into being a solid centre-half in a back 4 with the right partner on the left. I don't think that's necessarily Bolly. That would need a marquee signing to complement Cody's skills when it comes to aerial balls and all of that, what he doesn't offer. So yeah, I'm not writing him off.
I'm going to say it would take prying him out of Nuno's dead cold hands to get him. Now we'll talk about West Ham coming up on Monday. Is Podence going to be back?
I saw him they just had put him in training, so fingers crossed that he's back, because I want to see him play.
Me too. I think, just going back to the remarks, that we've been short of ideas when it's come to something different, or even to the extent that we did go back to 5 at the back, but how much of that was also enforced in that we didn't necessarily have the caliber of player for Nuno to rely on to take those 3 positions behind the striker, with Podence out as well. So at the very least, it brings some more flexibility back, which I think will be needed.
And I also think if he does play, Jose might actually get his first goal.
It could be the missing link. It could be the partnership that he's been missing. Someone that plays a little closer to him, that can be a little buzzy bee pest around the box. There could be some interlinked play, and up he pops.
My thing with Podence is he can play on the left, he can play on the right, he can play in the back, and he actually goes in between the whole game. Like, you don't know where he's going to come from. That's what we're missing. Like, we can switch Adama and Neto all you want in Jose. I'm like, unless you have a guy that's going here either way and them switching, it's not going to do much.
So if Podence makes it into the starting 11, who comes out, Adama or Neto?
Actually, I think they'll probably play them both, because like he'll probably have to go to a back 4. We'll just do it for a game just to see if he's ready to go, and then when they pull him out, maybe after 40 or 50 or 60 minutes, they'll go back to back 5 maybe. But I think he'll throw all 3 of them in there just to go for it.
What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I think it does come down to formation, and I still think we'll see 5 at the back for another few games at least. So I'm not sure whether Podence comes in and directly comes in as a starter. One thing that out of the 2 that you mentioned, the games previously up to the international break showed you that at least there was some flexibility in them swapping sides. So Adama switching with Neto, and there's more of that happening, which I think that would allow Podence to come in and take up his more natural position. If it's one of those from out wide coming in, I think we've seen that both Troyer and Neto have got the flexibility that they could play in that respect as well, and give one of them that rest or rotate some more.
Yeah, see, this is going to be interesting as far as what the formation is, because you're approaching a stretch here where you shouldn't need to go ultra defensive to beat some of these lower table teams. And those are also the ones that tend to tighten up as well. So you want to be able to break them down. So I feel like the back four would be good for this month, but I'm just so hesitant with how iffy Wolves have looked when they run the back four.
That and West Ham's top five right now. They're one of those teams that have actually benefited from not having fans in their stadium, in my opinion. But like, they're flying high right now. I think he'll probably go to his normal counterattacking play, because that's what we're good at. That's what's been drilled in for 4 years. Because like, we're terrible at trying to break teams down. We've seen it for years. I'm like, we'll counterattack them like we normally do. It's just, if we can get somebody on the end of the ball, score a goal. That's been our problem for a couple months.
If you just look at the table after the West Ham game and the teams that we've got, if you're a glass half full, a happy clapper guy like I tend to be, you look at those fixtures and you're licking your lips and you're thinking all of those are winnable, and just look how far that would propel you up the table. But then I have to pinch myself and think, have Wolves shown any of that at any stage this season? That we've
February, that's about it.
Yeah, we've barely strung any real consistency together with wins. And even in then, we weren't startling, we weren't brilliant, we weren't box office. There was a certain amount of luck in that period as well. Yeah. So that's reining in my expectations from that run as well. I'd genuinely be happy with probably getting through these next few fixtures, getting a win or two, just be really totally cut away from that bottom.
Closer we get to 40, the better.
Closer to 40, the better, and away from that battle between Fulham, Newcastle, Brighton. Them get far away from them and just enjoy the season. If they get to that, it takes a handbrake off, and we still get to those games against those teams that have something to play for, trying to stay up. We may see something, and certainly when it comes to Sheffield United, they're gone. Definitely no question. Hopefully the Albion aren't too far behind them. So come those games, if they've got nothing to play for, if we're just playing for positions, maybe that factors into it a little bit and favours us somewhat more. I don't know, but again, it's hard to get excited from what we've seen up to this point this season. Not necessarily miraculous shifts going to happen as we enter the run-in.
Is what we think about goal? Is it going to be Patricio? Have we heard if he's healthy or not?
I from what I heard after the game, that where he went down injured, I'm like, he was up and going. Someone drove him home, but he was up and aware. I just hope he didn't have a bad concussion, or if it was one. But from what I've heard, from what I've seen, he's healthy.
That's going to be interesting as far as how I feel my prediction would go. But I'll let you start out, Chris, with your prediction for the game.
Well, if you're going to say it like that, I'll say if Patricio's in goal, I'm going to say 1-0 win Wolves. If Ruddy's in, I'm not bemoaning Ruddy. I'm going to say 1-1 draw.
Sadly, I think West Ham have got our number this season after us having theirs the previous two. I think that they've got us, and we're going to... I could see it being an exciting 2-2 draw, but I'm going to be more negative and say we're going to lose 2-1. A little like that Everton game was at home. I think it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the way I'm going, Paul, as well. 2-1, I think, West Ham. As I said, I'm not going to pick Wolves to score more than one goal until they can prove that they can do it otherwise.
We're Wolverhampton. We're on our way back.
So what no stupid questions do we have this week, Paul?
Indeed, that part of the show where you, dear listener, are encouraged to get in touch and ask us anything about the Wolves, be it the match day experience, a part of our history or past players, or even if you're a new fan, ask us a question that you think may be elementary school level, but you can ask us in a judgment-free setting either on our Facebook, Twitter, or like regular listener Leif Coleman in Ithaca, New York, has done by emailing hello@wholelotofwolves.com. And Leif asks, just curious about stereotypes of fan bases around the EPL. For instance, here in American football, there are stereotypes of certain teams, i.e. Raiders fans are a bit off and just looking for fights. And Leaf says that's true, by the way. So sorry to any.
I'm actually an exception. I'm actually an old Raider fan, but I haven't watched them since the 90s. But yeah.
So Leaf's asking, so are there any stereotypes that would be fun to hear opinions of, like Millwall and Burnley? So I think this goes two ways, because I'd probably like to hear from your side first about more of those examples, like the Raiders and who's it who like to throw themselves through tables. And then does that extend to the college game as well? I know there's some pretty heated rivalries when it comes to colleges. Do they get into any squabbles, shall we say?
During Ohio State Michigan week, there's always something going on. I'm like, we hate them and they hate us. I know Bama and Auburn get
That's
into
right. The
tussles.
Iron Bowl's #1, Chris.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It can never be the game.
Yeah, as far as like stereotypes too, I think we can all agree, like Cowboys fans, they live in the past. What would
Like
be
Liverpool up to
Yeah,
last
yeah,
season.
I
I think
was gonna
they're
say that.
Liverpool
prime Liverpool
and
fans,
Villa and Villa.
Yeah, yeah.
Who would be the New York Yankees, where it's just they have so much money and so everybody likes them because they're winning? Would that be Chelsea or Man U?
Yeah, more Chelsea, I'd say, because that
I
was
was going to say Man City, but with Chelsea when they got all their money, basically.
Because often you look at heritage a little bit, and Chelsea were the first to really throw big bucks at it and buy their way to success, where Manchester United, that grew incrementally. Man City had success in the past. They'd been a big team, and like us, they'd seen some of the lowest of the lows as well. So it's more of the likes of a Chelsea that are seen to have these rich benefactors that would take that stereotype.
What about a Tampa Bay Rays over here, baseball-wise? Really good team, but the fan support is like non-existent.
That's a good one. Who would I go with as far as that goes? I don't think it, for whatever reason, it doesn't necessarily happen.
Fans are less fickle in England. That's why.
Yeah, they're kind. You do get that mentality of following a team through thick and thin. So if you have got that base of hardcore support, then you're never going to lose it. I might say, I don't know, an EPL team that does pretty well, but may not necessarily sell out the stadium every week. I might be inclined to think they're like Southampton. That would be my stretch.
I say like Southampton would be Burnley, even though it's the smallest city in England that has an EPL club. But like it's kind of like how it is here with like your high school team. Every pretty much podunk, borough, town, hamlet, parish, city, town has a club somewhere in the English tier. Where here we have 32 teams in the NFL. You usually root for the closest one. Over there, this is your city, this is your town. You're from here.
I think there's also some distinct stereotypes to tell Leaf about as well. So in the EPL, Leeds are often labelled dirty Leeds. So that's one to make note of.
Yeah.
And that's twofold. That comes down to their playing style in the 70s. That they just
Don Revy,
people. Yeah, just that was
tell them to watch the Damned United. That's a perfect movie for all of that stuff.
Yeah, that was how Leeds got their reputation on the field, and then off the field, Ellen Road is not the most hospitable place to go and visit as an away fan, and certainly wearing colours, you need to be very self-aware going there of the circumstances and the situation. And just in general, in England, you've always got that probably hangover of hooliganism in the 80s, early 90s that blighted the sport. So to a large extent, we've got obviously the segregation of the fans. You've got separate pubs if you do go away and watch your team in a different city. You'll be guided off the train from the train station. You'll be walked by the police to a pub. So it is potentially a lot different from the experience over here in the States. And yeah, there's definitely certain teams. Mentions one, Millwall. They've got a reputation. You wouldn't be walking around their ground with your jersey on, and yeah, you'd say a little prayer if you went in the wrong pub for sure.
All right. And then I have a stupid question, Paul. It was brought to my attention by Wolves Rated on Twitter. It's a great follow, by the way. And he mentioned that he listens to the podcast, but that I'm saying the team's wrong because I was saying Aston. I was saying West Brom. Apparently, that's not right in England. It's actually would be Villa and Albion. Paul, my stupid question is why?
Soccer certainly has always been a nickname first naming convention, that even our team, we're commonly known as the Wolves rather than Wolverhampton Wanderers, certainly more than Wolverhampton, that you often hear over here as well. So I think it definitely comes down to commonality of those names, and you are being accurate to say Aston because that is where they're from, that's where they play. But it's just it's not that common to refer to them like that. It's either their full name or nicknames typically.
Like saying Manchester for Manchester City or Manchester United.
Yeah. So with those teams, they always get a definition because you need to distinguish between the two. When it comes to the Villa, there's only one Villa, so that's why they take that monkier first.
Because even Wolves, there's Wolverhampton Casuals. There's even smaller clubs down the tiers that are in Wolverhampton, but they have a different nickname because Wanderers is already taken.
Yeah, and there's Wycombe Wanderers, and I don't know what tier they're in. So even we're not unique
in, I think, League One right now,
being the only Wanderers. So I think it's a
Bolton
naming
too.
convention. Yeah, Bolton Wanderers. So I think it's down to naming conventions, as I mentioned back on that thread. I pick up on that over here, especially when you get to that American football game at the end of February, that if you haven't got the license for, you're unable to say its name in case the weight of the NFL come down you and sue you because you've not got the media rights for it. So it's not the Buccaneers, it's the football team from Tampa versus the football team from Kansas City. So it's not the Buccaneers and it's not the Chiefs. It's the place where they play from. So I think you get a little bit of grace from the situation that we find ourselves over here in as well, Josh.
Yeah, so a big thanks actually to Wolves Rated because that was something I didn't know, and so I was glad to be alerted to that. So I will make sure from now on.
And it is the one you can start some pre-season training on that may get some of our listeners back in the UK backs up is it's definitely Norwich, not Norwich. Norwich. It's Norwich. So
and it's definitely the Albion and not West.
And with Birmingham, it's Birmingham, not Birmingham like it is in Bama. It's Birmingham.
Hey, watch it there.
No, I'm actually being.
Yeah.
It's actually because when they changed it from like Old English from the Latin, ham is and then they kept that.
As we bring this episode to a close, Chris, can you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
Just go to @WWFC Ohio on Twitter, or you can find us at Wolves USA on Facebook. That's the easiest way to find me.
How are you situated, Chris, in terms of Ohio Wolves and meetups? Is there anything scheduled post?
We haven't had much scheduled since I'm scheduled usually off on Saturdays now because of the games, but since the games haven't been on Saturdays, I haven't been able to watch games outside or do any meetups. But hopefully, whenever all this stuff's gone, we can start meeting up at Fido over at Easton Mall. That's where we usually hang out, but it's just getting everybody together because not everybody's in Columbus, which is local to me. We're all spread out because it's the whole of Ohio. So some people are 2 hours away and some are pretty close, but it's just getting everyone together.
Everybody go get vaccinated. Then we can.
Yeah, I've got my second shot. Next month. So fingers crossed. And speaking of that kind of stuff, how is your deep freeze a couple of months ago?
We're all warmed up now. It's been in the 80s.
Yeah, it's going back down to the 30s tomorrow here, but it's gonna warm back. It's gonna warm back up. The next day it's gonna be in the 70s. So that's Ohio weather for you.
Listeners, thanks for your continued support. If you were tuning in for the first time, please hit that subscribe button, like the podcast, share it with a football loving friend, give us a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform of choice if you can. This would help us a ton with our exposure. We're going to be back right after the game on Monday night, so you'll be able to hear our take on West Ham pretty fresh ahead of a quick turnaround before that trip to Fulham away on the Friday. So in the meantime, keep staying safe out there, folk. Look after you and your pack. In Nuno we trust, and up the Wolves.